And we're starting with the breaking news we ended last hour with. A New York appeals court has thrown out a massive civil fraud penalty against President Trump, a total that exceeded $500 million. They are calling that penalty excessive. Joining us now, NBC News legal and NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Grumbach. Danny, break down this ruling for us. Well, it's a lengthy ruling, and all the judges disagreed on their analysis, but they agreed on one final decision, which was that this judgment against Trump was a fine within the Eighth Amendment prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment and excessive fines. And in addition, it was punitive and it was excessive. That's really the conclusion. They concluded that because this was a punitive measure, because there weren't any victims who were compensated, it was just a judgment against the company and against Trump. So the court here concluded, with a lot of disagreement among them, but did conclude that this was an excessive fine within the meaning of the Constitution's Eighth Amendment. And Danny, when you say that this was a lengthy ruling, we're talking to the tune of more than 300 pages. So we know that folks in Washington, D.C., what some commentators are calling one of the most significant judicial rebukes in recent memory, has just unfolded. Donald Trump is now facing a series of court defeats that many observers describe as so challenging that his entire legal strategy appears to have crumbled in a dramatic way. On November 14, 2025, in this speculative analysis, a D.C. appeals court didn't just reject Trump's latest appeal. Many legal experts believe they dismantled it, stating that in their view, the government had no likelihood of success on appeal given what they cited as controlling and directly on-point Supreme Court precedent. This was reportedly not a close call or a split decision. The ruling could be interpreted as the judiciary signaling to Trump's team that the legal arguments presented were perceived as being so weak and lacking in merit that they were barely worth considering. The court is now moving to enforce compliance with previous orders. And from a legal standpoint, the available options to counter this appear to be severely limited. Before we continue, if you want to help us continue to bring you the real news, please hit that like button and subscribe. It makes a huge difference. Are going through it still, but Gary, give us a refresher of this case viewers are seeing on the screen from the time of the trial. How did we get here? So you'll remember that Donald Trump was accused of kind of plussing up how much money he actually was worth and how much money the things he owned were actually worth. He tripled the size of his penthouse in documents to some of these financial lenders and brokers. You just can't do that. And he was given a $300 million fine that has been plussed to $500 million because of interest. And that was 11 months ago now. And so this is a very significant win for Donald Trump. And is also for his sons, because it was paused for his sons as well, so the entire Trump family is impacted by this. But I do want to get to a point that Danny was talking about, how everyone sort of had different opinions when they released this opinion. The appeals court said, one of them said, penalties are supposed to stop people from doing things. They're concerned these individuals will reoffend. What makes this situation particularly noteworthy, according to analysts, is that it doesn't appear to be an isolated incident. Many see it as part of a cascading series of defeats that has left Trump's legal team in what some describe as complete disarray. The D.C. courts have been systematically rejecting appeals associated with Trump, denying his attempts to block court orders, and dismissing what some judges have labeled as meritless lawsuits. Legal analysts are describing this pattern as highly unusual, with strategies linked to Trump being struck down almost as soon as they're filed. The judiciary seems to be doing more than just pushing back. Some might say they are delivering a clear message that attempts to use aggressive delay tactics or manipulate the legal system may no longer be effective. The specific language used by the appeals court is quite potent and worth examining closely. When a court states a party has no likelihood of success and cites directly on-point Supreme Court precedent, they are leaving very little room for interpretation. They are suggesting that the argument is exceptionally weak, that established law appears to contradict the position, and that it may be a waste of the court's time. This is the kind of judicial rebuke that many legal professionals might consider a worst-case scenario, the kind of ruling that suggests a loss not just in the current battle, but potentially in the entire legal war. For Trump, whose strategy has often appeared to rely on delays and appeals, this could represent a major collapse of his legal game plan. The D.C. Appeals Court panel's decision to decline reinstating an order related to probable cause for holding Trump officials in criminal contempt sent what many felt were shockwaves through his administration. This suggests the original judge's restrictions remain in full force. Trump's officials could remain under threat of contempt charges, and it seems that efforts to protect them through appeals have not succeeded. The court isn't just rejecting arguments, it appears to be actively maintaining pressure on his administration, keeping the possibility of criminal contempt in play and making it clear that compliance with court orders is not considered optional. But here's what some commentators speculate really has the Trump team concerned. This isn't just about one case or one appeal. The D.C. courts have recently denied appeals to block the return of fired officials, thrown out his big lie defamation lawsuit as meritless, and rejected his attempts to fire independent commissioners. It seems that nearly every avenue Trump has tried to use to assert his power through the courts has been met with a roadblock. The judiciary appears to be drawing a bright red line, signaling that being president doesn't place someone above the law, grant them unlimited power, or mean courts will automatically approve their agenda. This is considered as humiliating and could undermine any claim to legal legitimacy. It may suggest that Trump is using the courts not for justice, but for harassment and political theater, and the judges are not receptive to it. The Democracy Docket reporting reveals another significant defeat. An attempt by Trump to fire an FTC commissioner was rejected by the appeals court. This is huge because it indicates that Trump may not be able to simply remove independent officials who don't follow his directives. The court appears to be protecting the independence of regulatory agencies from what some call authoritarian overreach. This could limit Trump's ability to purge the government of anyone who might stand up to him, thereby maintaining crucial checks and balances that Trump might desperately want to eliminate. What's particularly striking about these rulings is how quickly they seem to be coming down. Legal analysts note that Trump's D.C. court strategies are being struck down almost as soon as they're filed. This suggests that judges may have seen enough of these tactics and are no longer willing to entertain delay games. They appear to be moving with unusual speed to reject his appeals, deny his motions, and force compliance with existing orders. This judicial urgency could reflect a recognition that any delay might be used to further an agenda and potentially undermine the rule of law. The legal reasoning in these decisions seems to be rock solid and based on established precedent. The courts aren't creating new law or stretching definitions to rule against Trump. They appear to be applying basic, well-established legal principles. When the appeals court cites controlling and directly on-point Supreme Court precedent, they are essentially saying this isn't even a close call. The law is clear, Trump's position is incorrect, and there is no legitimate argument to the contrary. This makes it virtually impossible for Trump to appeal further or to claim the courts are biased against him. The cascade effect of these defeats is potentially devastating for Trump's broader legal strategy. Each loss makes the next defeat more likely, as courts cite previous rulings against him and build a body of precedent that consistently rejects his arguments. Trump's lawyers may find it increasingly difficult to make arguments that haven't already been rejected, to find judges who haven't already ruled against similar tactics, or to create delays when courts are moving with such speed to shut down their strategies. The political implications of these judicial defeats could extend far beyond the courtroom. Trump has often presented himself as a winner who knows how to work the system and get judges to do what he wants. These defeats could paint him as a serial loser in court, someone whose legal arguments are consistently rejected as meritless, and someone who can't even protect his own officials from criminal contempt. This could undermine his strongman image and show that his blustering threats may carry no weight with an independent judiciary. For Trump's allies and officials, these court defeats could create a crisis of confidence. If Trump can't win in court, if he can't protect them from legal consequences, and if his strategies are consistently failing, why should they stick their necks out for him? The appeals court's refusal to block contempt charges sends a particularly chilling message. Follow what could be illegal orders, and you might end up in jail with Trump unable to save you. This dynamic could make it much harder for Trump to find people willing to carry out questionable or illegal directives. The broader significance of these D.C. court defeats cannot be overstated. They may represent the judiciary's definitive statement that what some view as authoritarian ambitions will be blocked at every turn. The courts aren't just ruling against Trump on technical grounds or narrow issues.
They appear to be rejecting his entire approach to governance, his view of unlimited executive power, and his attempts to place himself above the law. This is the system of checks and balances working exactly as the founders may have intended, with the judiciary standing as a bulwark against presidential overreach. The speed and decisiveness of these rulings send a clear message to Trump and his administration. The courts are ready this time. Unlike in his first term, when Trump may have caught the judiciary off guard with unprecedented actions, the courts now seem to understand his playbook and are prepared to counter it immediately. The fact that his strategies are being struck down almost as soon as they're filed suggests that judges have learned from experience and may not allow Trump to use delay and confusion as weapons against justice. For the American people, these court victories might represent hope that the rule of law can still prevail against what are perceived as authoritarian threats. Every time a court rejects Trump's appeals, denies his attempts to exceed his authority, or calls his lawsuits meritless, it could reinforce the principle